Alrighty boys, welcome back once again to another video. How you guys doing? Guys, today we're going to be making a video on the new Sci-Fi Raygun in Fortnite Save the World, known as the Plasmatron 9000. Now, before we do jump into the video, I'm sure you guys are curious. Yes, that was the new intro for the channel. It is something that I've been trying to get done for the past week, and I hope you guys do enjoy it. Nothing obnoxious, nothing in your face, and nothing that lasts for too long. So I think it kind of fits the channel in a pretty good way. So let me know what you guys think of the intro in the comments down below. Just another quick reminder, my G Fuel code will be 30% off for the next 3 days, so you guys still have 3 days to pick up something at a very discounted price. And they just got starter kits back in stock, which are 15 bucks, a shaker, and a bunch of flavors. Very cheap and easy to buy if you're looking to get into G Fuel. But yeah, code demonjoefr, 30% off for another 3 days. Make sure you get in on that if you guys are interested. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video, and let's check out the new ray gun in Fortnite Save the World. Now, this weapon is very interesting. It's a weapon that I didn't think I would really like too much. I wanted it to be good, and I didn't think I would like it too much, but I kind of ended up really liking it. I ended up really loving it, actually. I think this weapon is very unique, and it's very cool, and it's kind of niche. You know, not everybody's going to like this weapon, of course, but this weapon is very unique, not only in the way that it looks, because it just looks like a retro sci-fi ray gun, but in the way that it shoots and the way that everything goes about it. It introduced new stats, which are down here, called, you know, heat capacity, generation, cooling speed, overheat cooldown, all sorts of stuff like that. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. So what it says in the description is, it says it's a pistol of retro sci-fi, a short-ranged automatic energy pistol with a moderate rate of fire that shoots expanding rings of plasma, and those shots will pierce enemies. Now, the build that we went for on this weapon is energy, crit damage, cooling rate, which cooling rate is essentially reload speed, and heat capacity is essentially mag size. Went with cooling rate, crit damage, and crit rating, and the final perk, critical hits cause 7 exploding projectiles to scatter the surrounding area. And you know, this is pretty nice to allow you to hit even more enemies, as this weapon is definitely a multi-target weapon. A very interesting pistol. Of course, it's got its crit potential at 43% and almost 600% critical hit damage. It's got a fire rate of 4.5 and a very small range of 1.5k, but we'll get into that into the gameplay. Pretty decent impact, and of course, the heat capacity is 100. Basically, what this means is that the heat level that causes the weapon to overheat. The heat generation is how much heat this weapon generates per shot. So seeing as it has a 4.0, I know you guys can't see this, it has a 4.0 heat generation and a 100 capacity, meaning you'll be able to shoot 25 times before you run out, and you have to kind of let it cool down. You got the cooling speed of the weapon, which is 87.5 per second, and then you have the overheat cooldown, which is how long it's going to take for that cooling speed to finish. So essentially, you will have a 1.43 reload time. Now, I'm sorry if all of that was very amateur, the fact that I just went off screen for... Anyways, the cool thing about this weapon, or not really the cool thing, but the interesting thing is that this weapon is bugged very heavily in the sense that none of this even matters, not even the cooling rate perk. And if you try to change it to anything right now, you can't change it to anything else that's really useful, I guess maybe durability. But in the current state of this weapon, the Plasmatron 9000 has no cooldown, it has no overheat, it has no heat capacity or generation or cooling speed or anything. You can shoot this thing for as long as you want. If you want to shoot 3,000 energy cells at one time without reloading or stopping, you can do it with this weapon. And of course, the reason I went over those stats right there is because by the time you guys might be seeing this video, that might not be the case. So keep in mind, if this were working as intended, you would get about 25 shots per, you know, kind of capacity, I guess, and then you would have a cooldown period of 1.43. So that is kind of the whole thing with this weapon at the moment. A little bit broken, but let's go ahead and jump into the loadout. Now, because of the weapon being broken, if you want to utilize this weapon the best that you can in its current state, then what you need to be using is Crackshot in your commander. Because what he does is he gives you Holiday Spirit for every one shot, which stacks up to 50 stacks. And seeing as you never have to reload with this weapon, you will 100% of the time always have 50 stacks. If you're looking for the most optimal loadout right now, Crackshot is the best. However, However, when this weapon does get fixed, make it count coming from Beetlejuice will be the best. What she does is increases your pistol critical damage. So we went with her in the commander slot just to kind of showcase, you know, whenever this does get fixed, that this is the proper hero you want to use. I went with preemptive strike on this weapon just to get a little bit of extra damage out. Everything else that is an option for a team perk is really up to your opinion, but I want to really maximize on damage. We went with hip shot from Ranger Deadeye. He will give us extra pistol damage. We went with Blaze of Glory from Southie. This guy will give us extra damage after we phase shift. We went with Plasma Arc, which in my opinion is essential for this weapon. This weapon is supposed to hit multiple targets at the same time. Cyberclops definitely lets you do that. Energy damage has a 1/5 chance to zap to nearby enemies for 58% of damage dealt. And then we went with Saurian Might because this weapon has such a slow fire rate. This will allow us to get even more damage with our shots for every 1 second. So that is the loadout that I went with on this character, and probably the best loadout that you can do after this weapon is fixed and, you know, crack shot is no longer a very viable option. So yeah, we went with this loadout right here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how this weapon works in a power level 100 zone, and then showcase it on a power level 100 smasher, and then do the same for a 140 smasher, and then have a gameplay overview and talk about my opinions on the weapon while showcasing some very intense gameplay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Alrighty boys, so here we are in game with the Plasmatron 9000. Now I do have a smasher somewhere, there he is, somewhere down there, that we will be testing this on, but I want to go and showcase exactly how this weapon works, and kind of how the range works as well, and just how everything goes with this weapon. It's very much different. So as you guys can see, this is what the reticle looks like, very much different from anything that we're normally used to. I can go and demonstrate the fact that this weapon can shoot for an infinite amount of time, so I can just hold down the trigger, and at no point will my gun get slower in terms of the fire rate, nor will it show any signs of stopping or anything of the such. Now, I did test this out with Bulletstorm Jonesy for those of you guys that are curious, and Bulletstorm Jonesy does not buff the fire rate of this weapon, so you cannot hold down the trigger forever and have an infinite fire rate, essentially. This weapon does not get any fire rate buff from Bulletstorm Jonesy, but as you guys can see here, I'm going on my 100th energy cell, and I had no buffs to my heat capacity, only my cooling speed, and I am showing no signs whatsoever of stopping. And now we have a storm coming up, so nice. As you guys can see, the plasma bolts that are coming out are expanding rings, as it said. I kind of want to showcase a little bit of the range, so if I'm to stand back here and shoot at this wall, as you guys can see, we're making contact with the wall. If I were to shoot at the second tile right here, as you guys can see, looks like we're making contact there. And if I were to shoot at this third one right here, we are not even making contact whatsoever. So the tile range is, you know, just about to there. Just about right here whenever we're standing back here in terms of how far it can go. So you're not really looking at anything that is going to be too insanely useful from far away. Not like I'm going to see some husk down there and be like, oh yeah, let me, you know, shoot him, get him with this ring, because the ring is ever expanding, so it would just kind of infinitely expand into, well, a black hole and then suck everybody in and then murder the entire universe. But, you know, yeah, that's why they nerfed the range of the weapon, so that wouldn't get silly and out of hand, and you probably wouldn't hit what you're trying to hit anyways. So let's go ahead and jump down here really quick. I don't want to damage myself. I want to keep full health for Saurian Might. We aren't going to grab the health boost just because, I mean, I don't want to go get the health boost at the moment, but this is only a power level 100 smasher anyways. We don't need every single ounce of damage that we can get. So I'm going to use my Silent Spectre really quick, silently get rid of some of these husks so that we can effectively try out this weapon on a smasher alone. He is elemental, keep in mind, we will be doing 75% of our damage. So let's go ahead and roll up on these guys really quick. And let me just get rid of this Riot Husky right here, and we will be good to go. And of course he wakes up immediately. We got some husks over here. I can show you how this weapon deals with husks, like big groups of husks. This is actually a really good way to show it. So this is what the weapon does. It absolutely decimates. You can't actually hit Riot Huskies from the front, which is very unfortunate. Like, no matter how hard you try, you cannot get it through the hole to shoot them in the face. That sounds awful. But you can't. You also can't pierce shielders, for those of you guys that are curious about that. But as you guys saw, the rings get pretty big, and you're able to hit a lot of enemies at one time. Let's go ahead and run up to the smasher right here and do a little bit of a smashy boy test. So we're going to slow field him. We're also going to run away. Phase shift for the extra damage, and just shoot him in the back a little bit. And as you guys can see, a little bit of a slow time to kill, but he is dead nonetheless. Now, regardless of that smasher test, that should not in any way, shape, or form sway the way that you feel about this weapon, because the purpose of this weapon is multi-target damage. Allow me to showcase this with this huge group of husks as I fire into them, and multiple upon multiple upon multiple of them that I'm not even aiming at are dying. It is absolutely fantastic, the work that this weapon can do. Also, did I mention that this weapon actually does not blow up propane? No matter how hard you try, even if the propane husk is holding it himself, you cannot, no matter what you do, blow up a propane tank. Meaning that with this weapon, on how it chains to other enemies, how the projectiles fly around, how the ring hits multiple husks, this weapon is absolutely perfect for trap tunnels. My god, is this weapon very effective. Now keep in mind, we do have to keep in mind that this weapon isn't going to have the unlimited rate of fire and the unlimited magazine that it has at the moment right now. You know, by the time you guys are watching this video, it might have already been fixed. So we do need to keep that in mind. But I would argue that even with having to cool down your weapon and, you know, not being able to fire it at an unlimited rate, I would still argue that the piercing of this weapon per shot would maintain its DPS enough to where it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we can shoot at the smasher and we can still do very decent damage to him, but the fact of the matter really comes down to the fact that this weapon is truly a multi-target kind of enemy. It's a truly multi-target kind of weapon. Now, the thing I really like about this weapon, you guys might have remembered my old school ghost pistol review, and the reason I didn't like the ghost pistol is just because it shot so slowly and it was so hard to hit multiple enemies at the same time. That was the main argument for the ghost pistol. Oh, you could hit multiple enemies, that's why it's so good. But the problem with the ghost pistol is that you have such a small area at which you can actually hit your targets. This weapon expands into a ring. You are going to be hitting enemies that you probably didn't even see. A little bit of an exaggeration, but still, you're going to be hitting enemies that you're not even trying in the slightest to hit, and you are still going to be decimating them. I absolutely love this weapon and the way that it functions. It is very, very nice. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these guys too. That one shot just got rid of 4 of those guys. You know, I'm sitting here shooting. I shot at 2 husks. For that group of husks right there, I shot at 2 of them. It killed all of them. You know, I wasn't even meaning to shoot the other husks, and it killed like a group of 7 or however many that was. Big brain. But yeah, this weapon's absolutely fantastic in terms of the multi-target damage and the potential of hitting all those targets easily. It really shines in this kind of area, and I think regardless of having an unlimited clip or not, it still will continue to shine in that area post-patch. But I want to take this to a power level 140 smasher and showcase to you guys the true damage potential against an in-game enemy, because I do have a lot of things to say about the potential of this weapon whenever you try to treat it in an in-game situation. So I will see you guys then. Let's go ahead and run up on this big busty boy, throw down a slow field, get out of the way, phase shift, and pummel this man with some laser. And so as you guys can see, with this weapon's 6th perk, we're actually, the 7 projectiles that are exploding whenever we crit are exploding inside of the smasher. I feel like everything I've been saying today sounds dirty, but those 7 projectiles aren't protruding away from the smasher to hit other enemies. Those 7 projectiles protruded into the smasher because he's a big busty boy. But yeah, so that's a little bit of a showcase of what it can do to power level 140 enemies. Now I want to showcase to you guys what it can do in a high power level 4 times mission with, you know, 4 teammates, of course, or 3 other teammates, and you know, with trap tunnels built up and an actual defense going on, and kind of showcase what this weapon can do. By the way, it does not go through walls, or at least it seemingly doesn't, apparently. Yeah, so it doesn't really go through walls, if you guys were curious. I found that out on stream. I wasn't about to mention it, but I know some of you guys are probably interested in that, and I don't believe player made walls either, as we were testing earlier, just to make sure. No, it doesn't. But yeah, so let's go ahead and head on over to that gameplay, give you guys my general thoughts on this weapon and my concerns and the reasons I like it and the reasons I dislike it. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in just a moment, like 2 seconds. Alrighty boys, so here we are at the gameplay overview portion of the video where I showcase to you guys an actual real situation of using this weapon in a 4 times mission, which this will be a deliver the bomb against power level 149 husks, and of course with my teammates buffing my damage overall, and just seeing how the weapon really just performs in an actual mission, in an actual situation that you were supposed to use the weapon in, instead of just going into a solo mission and trying it out. So, how do I feel about the Plasmatron 9000? Well, one thing you guys will notice in the gameplay as well, I should probably point out, is my friend Loomis and I will be using this weapon side by side. So if you see an absolute crazy amount of particle effects on screen, I do apologize in advance, as we were absolutely slaying everything with this weapon. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the positives of this weapon, and then I'll segue into the negatives of the weapon, and then I'll rate it myself. So as far as the Plasmatron 9000 goes, it has one of the best, probably some of the best potential whenever it comes to piercing enemies and hitting multiple enemies at the same time. The fact that it starts off as a small ring and then expands slowly and is able to hit so many targets at the same time is fantastic. You can accompany this with Cyberclop, and then you can also have, you know, that chaining effect, and then you also have the 7 projectiles as well off of every crit for every 3 seconds, which, seeing as this is a crit weapon, is definitely fantastic. So I feel as though this weapon definitely has a lot of potential there. It doesn't ignite propane, which is very good, and I'm a very big fan of that. Currently, the weapon does have an infinite mag size, and although I would love that mag size to stay around, of course it doesn't. I do feel as though the piercing, in the way that you can actually hit so many targets at the same time with this weapon, makes it where it's not as bad, although it is going to take a heavy hit whenever it does get a fixed magazine. But I do feel as though the piercing of this weapon is done better on this weapon than most other piercing weapons or kind of anything of that nature in the game. It's definitely one of the strongest when it comes to multi-target, outside of like explosives, right? The negatives I do have with this weapon is, one, the range, and you're probably not going to notice it much in this gameplay because we have a very well-made trap tunnel, but getting close to these high power level husks in the end game can be very dangerous, as sometimes they can 2 to 3 hit you if you're not careful, and having to get so close with this weapon in certain situations can be bad, which is why you need to lock yourself to a trap tunnel, shooting into the trap tunnel or shooting from the trap tunnel, and killing husks that way. If you have a lot of blasters and gunslingers and lobbers, then you're definitely going to have a bad time using this weapon, as it's going to be hard to fend for yourself, so you may need to switch to another weapon. Another thing that I don't really like too much about this weapon is the missed opportunities for piercing. I feel as though it does an excellent job whenever it comes to hitting multiple targets, and piercing in the sense that it pierces enemies very well and hits a large target of them, and also doesn't ignite propanes, but it also doesn't go through shielders, you know, the big bubble shields, and that is the main gripe for me with this weapon. It does such an excellent job at going through pretty much anything and doing massive amounts of damage at that. Why can't it go through shielders as well? It would bring the potential of this weapon up even further, and whenever it does get its magazine nerf, or, you know, the magazine fix or what have you, you know, it would be a little bit less noticeable on the damage side, so you would actually be able to hit enemies from afar and go through their shields with it. That's my main gripe with this weapon as far as the piercing goes, but the range and some of the piercing whenever it comes to shielders are kind of the 2 negatives that I don't really like. But the overall AoE and the fact that the ring is so huge to hit multiple enemies, definitely a huge thing for this weapon. What would I rate it? I would probably rate it, now that I've thought about it, I gave it an 8.5 on stream. I'd probably give it a 7 to a 7.5 now that I've thought about it. Definitely very useful in the early game, but not as useful whenever you get to those high power level, more difficult missions. The range is a very huge downside, and also the fact that you can't go through the bubble shields is a very big downside in the late game, but also not that big of a deal in the early game for this weapon. But all in all, it's very fun, it's very unique, we haven't seen anything like it before, and I personally am a huge fan of this weapon and definitely do not regret maxing it out whatsoever. But guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. Those are my thoughts concerning this weapon. Also, it can't go through walls, and that would be a really nice touch, but those are my thoughts of this weapon. I do want to hear yours in the comments down below, but I overall did enjoy it. Definitely do not regret leveling it up, and I do want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I greatly do appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you did like it. Subscribe if you're new around here. I make videos like this like every day, essentially. Use supporter creator code demonjoefr and G Fuel code demonjoefr if you guys would like to support me. Links will be in the description to all of my stuff as well. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I greatly do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.